Hello, math students. Welcome back to Module 3 called Rational Numbers. This is Lesson 6, and it is called Writing and Interpreting Inequality Statements Involving Rational Numbers. And our goal for today we will practice writing and explaining inequality statements. The question that I'm going to ask you is, what can you do to a rational number before you create an inequality statement? All right, some things to know. The number line is your friend. You need to remember that you can always show the rational numbers on the number line to see how to write the inequality. So I would like you to use the number line to help you identify how these are, ordered maybe, because when you put them in order, you also get to determine what is the greater than or the less than value. So if we were to put -1.5 on our number line, let's go ahead and say that this is -1 here. This is -2 here, and let's go ahead and say this is -3. So then our -4, they're not evenly spaced. I'm sorry, because I forgot that I had to do -5, so -5 would be there. I think that's the biggest one. Okay, and then on this side, we have, let's do 1, and let's do 2 here, okay? So now, if we put our numbers on our number line, like in our last lesson, this says -1.5. So I'm going to go to 1 and half of that. So this right here would be -1.5. So that guy lives right there. This one says 1 3/4 or 1 75/100, which is sitting here about here because we go to 1 and then 3/4 of the way to the next one. So this would be 1 75/100. Then we have -5. Which sits all the way down here, and then we have 2 that sits right here, and then we have -1 8/10. Well, -1 8/10 is before -2, so we have -1 8/10, which happens to sit right there. And now what we can do is we can write an inequality statement. What you have to remember about an inequality is that we have less than, right? And I showed you that with the way we can remember that with our hands. We have greater than, okay, and those are the two that we're going to be using. We also have equals, but equals is not really an inequality because inequality in the word itself means not equal, so we don't really have that. So we'll just say not equal and then put the word not in front of it, and that symbol means not equal. Okay, so now let's go, because what we want to do is we want to see how we can make an inequality statement. So if I'm looking at -1.5 compared to 1 3/4, -1.5 sits right here, and -1 3/4 sits right here. So I can say that -1.5 is less than 1 3/4. Okay, does that make sense? All right, now we're comparing this guy to this guy. So I have 1 3/4 and -5. And I can see that 1 3/4 is greater than -5, so 1 75/100 or 1 3/4 is greater than -5. -5 sits right here, and then I have 2. 2 sits right here, so -5 is less than 2. Okay, and then we have 2, and we have -1 8/10, which is down here, so we would say 2 is greater than -1 8/10. Okay, so it's pretty simple. The best thing that I would suggest that you do is put it on a number line first, because if you put it on a number line, you can see it and you compare them as you go, and then you know which ones are the correct symbols that you're supposed to use. So -1.5 is less than 1 75/100. 1 75/100 is greater than -5. -5 is less than 2. And 2 is greater than -1 8/10. All right, so going back to our goal, today we will practice writing and explaining inequality statements. We did that. What can you do to a rational number before you create an inequality statement? Put it on the number line. All right, and that's all I have for you today. Talk to you soon. Bye.